Hi, my name is Sage, and this week I decided I wanted to make a little clay mouse, but I also wanted to give him wings and a magical wand too, because obviously he's gonna be magical, and I want him to sit on a paper mache mushroom. So that's what I'm gonna do this week. And to get started, I'm gonna need a wooden base and some tinfoil. And I'm gonna make the mushroom first, so I'm gonna scrunch up the tinfoil and make a stem. I then keep adding more layers until I'm confident that it will hold up the mushroom cap. I then move on to making the cap itself, and to do that I basically just make a disc shape out of tinfoil up top of the stem. I then just keep adding tinfoil up top of the disc itself until I'm happy with how it looks, until eventually it looks like this. Also, I forgot to press record, so just imagine that I glued them together. Next, I scrunch up even more tinfoil to make the base of the mouse. I then cover the little tinfoil nugget with a layer of clay. And now I can move on to sculpting the mouse. Also, I just decided his name is now Basil. So, Basil! And when I start to sculpt Basil, I work on his face first. I then give him some ears, just because I didn't like the first ones. So then I give his back and his caboose a little bit more clay before his tail emerges. Next, I work on smoothing him out, before then making a flat circular piece of clay that will be his hind leg. And then I work on smoothing it to his body. I also smooth out the back of his head during this time, just because I can't focus. I then attach a little piece of clay to make his arm, before then rolling out a little hot dog shape to make his little foot. Next, I use my ball stylus and poke in an eye socket, and then putting in a little round sphere of clay for his eye. Next, I make another little round sphere for his little hand, before using my ball stylus and melding the hand and the arm together. Next, I take a small piece of wire and cover it with clay, and then I use my ball stylus and give it some texture, as this will be the magical wand that Basil holds. I then put the magical wand aside and start to carve out his smile. Next, I make some little hot dogs for his fingers, and then I attach all the little fingers to his little hand, and I do know that they do have 5 fingers, but I decided to ignore that, so that's that. And then I bulk up his arm because he's a chonky mouse. Ooh, cute. Later, I adjust his little fingers so then he can hold his magical wand. I then use the ball stylus to smooth everything out. Ooh, and now I'm on to making a wing, and I attach it by pressing my fingers into his back, and I smooth everything out while I'm at it. I then make some little feathers off screen before then attaching them to the wing. And I kind of make them like an oval-y shape, but kind of tapered at the bottom, but also kind of not. I just felt like they were feathery enough, so I went with it. I then get distracted and decided, you know what, he needs some chubbier cheeks and also a new eye. Is it the last eye? No. But that's okay, I'm also gonna give him a nose and a new smile. Ooh. I then go in with my stylus and smooth out his face, before then doing the exact same thing that you just saw on the other side of his face. I do give him chubbier cheeks off screen on both sides because I was indecisive about it. I'm a Libra. I also gave his wings some more texture off screen, and I'm gonna show you how I did that on the blank side. So first, I start by running down my pointy stylus down the middle of each leaf, and I make sure each ridge that I make is deep. And the reason why I do this is because for the next part, I make shallow ridges that are running diagonally down from the deep ridges, just to give it some more texture. And I continue this process on each feather until finally I'm working back on the face. And once I'm working back on the face, I kind of just jump around and do a little bit of everything. I also end up working on other parts like his hand, making it more outstretched so it's kind of like he's casting something. I then bulk up his little foot by adding some more clay and then smoothing it all out. Next, I add some little hot dogs on the end of his foot to make his little toes, before then using my stylus to smooth everything out. I then repeat this process on the other side, before then going back and doing some more details on the face. like poking in some nose holes. I then stared at his eye for too long and decided, you know what? He needs a new one. And this is the last eye, yay! Only took 3 times, woohoo! And this is what he looks like before I put him in the oven, and then I let him just bake before moving on to the paper macheing. And these are the scraps of paper that I use. And this is the mache. Pause if you want to read the recipe. You may be asking, why do you use food coloring in your paper mache? I use it just because it's easier to see on camera, plus pretty colors are fun. And for this part, I mostly just focus on covering the entire mushroom with the mache and the newspaper. I know I always go overboard and add way too much mache, but that's just because I have the too much gene. And to counteract that, I use Bounty, not sponsored, to kind of soak up the goop before I leave it set overnight. Now it's back to Basil. He did end up falling over in the oven because I'm silly and placed him wrong. So the side of his face right here is a little messed up, but you know what? He's still beautiful. So we continue on. And the first step of moving on is to paint the wooden base. And the second is to paint Basil with the first coat of brown paint. And once the first coat of paint is all dried and good to go, I then paint him twice more until eventually he looks like this. And since now Basil is looking all cute and wonderful, it's now time to paint his toes and his fingers. I go over all of them in pink as well as his tail. And just like the brown, I then wait for the first layer to dry and then do another 2 coats. And now he looks like this. I then mix my pink and red paints together to make a darker pink so that I can place that color on the ends of his fingertips, toes, and tail, and also the palms of his hands. Before then also placing the color in his ears, his nose holes, and his mouth. After that, I paint his eyes black. And I do a few coats as well. And then I decide I'm gonna paint his wings. I'm gonna go with a yellowy color because I think it would look really nice against the brown. Once the yellow is dried, I then go over it with a sienna paint just to kind of give it more depth. I then do the exact same thing on the other side. And now it's time to highlight his eyes by putting in some little white dots, and I also highlight his water lines. I love doing this part because it made Basil come alive. Later on, I started to paint his wand, and I do paint it brown, but that doesn't stay because I didn't like how it looked. This part is mostly me doing touch-ups, just filling in any place that needs to be filled in, or just, you know, a little bit more cleaner lines, nothing too crazy. I then decided on a color for his wand, and I decided to go with the color green, because green is cool. Huh. I then put Basil aside, and now it's time to paint the mushroom. And I start by painting the mushroom cap. I mixed some yellow and some white on my painter's palette to get the color that you're seeing right now. And once I'm done that, I then paint the stem brown. But then I thought that the top of it looked a little bit too boring, so I added some brown on top too. And now it kind of looks like a pancake. And honestly, pancakes are pretty cool. I like them, so I was pretty happy. And now that the mushroom is painted and dried, it is now time to glue it to the wooden base. And I use Gorilla Glue, not sponsored. And once it's adhered, I then hot glue the fake moss onto the wooden base. And once everything is glued down, this is what it looks like. To keep the moss from being monotonous, I then decide to add some sprigs within them. So I just got some fake berries from the dollar store and some fake greenery, and I just hot glue them onto the moss. And I also add in some white flowers too, because I just think they're pretty. And that was my reasoning. Then I just continue this process until I think there's enough flowers. So since we're coming up to the end of the video, I would just like to say thank you so much for watching. And now it's time for the glamour shots.